Hi guys, today I want to talk about power dynamics in a relationship. Um, Unplugged 5, the title of Unplugged 5 is Operant Conditioning, and operant conditioning is a term that we borrow from a behavioral psychologist called B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner used to do experiments on rats, and the word operant actually means behavior. And what he did is that he could control the behavior of a rat. The operant here, for example, can be pressing a lever. So when a rat presses a lever, a piece of food appears. And he was able to train these rats to such an extent that even rats could play piano just through controlling their behavior. So there is a way of reinforcing certain behavior, punishing certain behaviors, and so on and so forth. And through that, through operant conditioning, you are able to actually control the behavior of another being or another organism. And you extract certain behaviors from another individual or being through positive, negative reinforcement, and so on. I talk about that in Unplugged 5, Operant Conditioning. One of the reasons why I'm going to have this discussion is because this is one of the things that our fathers did not tell us, power dynamics in a relationship. There's a very common scenario that plays out many times. You find that a man has gone out, he's having fun with his friends, and maybe he hooks up with a side chick, okay? Back home, he has a curfew. The wife expects him, or they have agreed that he should be home by midnight or 1. So these guys, after having some few drinks, they decide to go to our Airbnb. He has a nice time with the side chick, and after nutting, he falls asleep. Then he wakes up, and by the time he wakes up, he looks at his watch. Wow, it's 3 a.m. Oh gosh, I'm past my curfew time. What am I going to do? He looks at his phone. He has 50 missed calls from the wife. So he thinks quickly. He calls his friends. Kina Brayo, he tells them, oh, this has happened. What am I going to tell Irene? And then maybe Brayo knows the OCS of a certain police station. They go to the police station. They get the guy booked in. They remove his shoes. They take his phone. And then Brayo calls the wife and tells them, by the way, this guy was arrested. Even me, I've been looking for him. Kumbe hata umemtafuta. Nasikia ako Pangani. So you go to the police station, you pay the bond and so on, and then, you know, maybe shouts at the policeman, nyinyi wajinga sana, mnanishikia na sina hata hatia. And that's how he covers up his transgression. But the important thing is this. Ask yourself, what is it that can make two people who met when they're adults, what is it that can make one of these partners so powerful in the relationship that someone has to go to such a huge extent to cover up his sin? Yet, this woman is not even stronger than him. She's not going to beat him up, as in even if you are with the side chick, what is she going to do? She'll probably just have she's going to throw her feet, she can shout at you, okay? And maybe deny you sex for a few weeks or months. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? But yet you see, this guy goes that far. Why? It's because he has been operant conditioned, and a lot of it is around how women control intimacy and sexual access. So women end up wielding so much power, so much that it's almost like witchcraft. You find men are scared of their wives. They have to ask for permission before they can commit to meet with the boys or go for a certain event and so on. And yet the same case does not happen to women. So more of that is in Unplugged 5, Operant Conditioning. Today I want to talk about power dynamics in relationships. This is really important because for men who take power in relationships casually, oftentimes when you don't hold your frame in a relationship, the woman is going to take that frame in the relationship. And once she takes the frame in the relationship, she's going to resent you for not being a leader in the relationship, for not playing your part as a man. And many times that relationship will end in a ditch, because women don't like to be paired with men who are not competent, with men who are not leaders, with men who don't have the command presence that makes the women feel safe and protected. Okay, so that is very important. This is one of the things that many of us, when you are young, like when marriages are starting or relationships are starting, you feel you're bulletproof, you love each other, and you don't think it matters. I mean, who cares whether she's in the driver's seat or not, okay? You cede your frame, you cede your power, you cede your control, and the woman is going to quickly take it over. Many marriages today, even in Nairobi, they are sexless marriages. The man and the wife maybe have 2 separate bedrooms, or their beds are cold, and it's because the relationship has died. No attraction is there anymore. The woman does not feel desire towards this man. Most of the times it is because these are men who lost control, they lost their frame. So these are very, very important subject. If you're already married, or if you're planning to get married, it's important to know or to understand power dynamics and how they shift in a relationship. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So power is not about overt control. It is very subtle. And one thing that can tell you how much women wield power in most marriages today, during primetime news, you notice most of the advertisements, unless it's gambling or alcohol, most of them are targeting women. They're targeting households. It's because it's women who control household expenditure. Even though it is most men who earn the more income in most households, it's the women who control household expenditure. And this happens because of a dynamic that is called hypoagency. Hypoagency basically means it's a power dynamic where the person that is weaker or considered weaker is actually the one who has the agency in the relationship. So women wield more power in most marriages today, and it is because many men have gone to sleep. That's why many men tell you, happy wife, happy life. They've surrendered the frame, they've surrendered the power. They no longer want to quarrel because the punitive reinforcement that they get from their wives when they get bad behavior, when they get into bad behavior, is so severe that these men just surrender to their wives. So if you get this early, before you are married, the better for you. If you're already married but you want to understand where the power lies in your relationship and what you can do about it, this video is also going to be for you. So power is about subtle control. It's about subtle influence. Okay, it's about unspoken agreements within the relationship, and it's about the default roles that you play. And men who don't recognize this, as I mentioned earlier, they normally lose the intimacy in the relationships, they lose attractiveness, they lose power, and they end up being emasculated in the relationships. Okay, many times these relationships collapse. Okay, whether initiated by men or by the women. The disrespect normally just escalates. Remember I said earlier that red flags never become green flags. In relationships, that is just the case. Okay, so how does power shift within relationships? It shifts very, very slowly through concessions, when a man abandons his frame and allows a woman's emotional whims and emotional storms to dictate the flow. Remember, Rich Cooper talks about betarization through 1,000 conceptions. So many men start relationships like alphas, but through small concessions, they become betadized. That is what Rich Cooper talks about when he talks about betarization through 1,000 concessions. Women are very emotional creatures. They're going to throw fits. They're going to give you a temper tantrum. They're going to withhold intimacy. They're going to give you the cold treatment. These very small behaviors, the operant conditioning, are the means through which women control the outcomes and be able to influence the power dynamics in a relationship. So how does power shift in a relationship? It's important for you to know how this happens, and I'm going to give you about 4 ways that this power can shift. Okay? So there'll be non-verbal cues. There'll be non-verbal cues, particularly through violation of boundaries or through the tests. I talked about shit test earlier. She's going to shit test you. So you need to set boundaries and see how she reacts. Push back. Like if she tells you that we should take the kids for swimming tomorrow, tell her, no, tomorrow I'll be watching the match between Man U and Arsenal, and see how she handles that. Okay? So if she escalates the issue, doubles down and digs her feet in, then it actually shows you that she feels that she's the one that is in control or the one that is in power, or she's trying to wrest the power away from you. Okay, so you should check, see whether she respects the decision you've made or she doesn't. That's very, very important. And then the other aspect is conversational control. When you're actually talking to her, when you're having a discussion, maybe in the presence of others, see who interrupts, who dictates the topics that you're going to discuss. Okay, who gets to have the last word. If she seems to always want to have the last word, then it tells you that she's trying to wrest the power from you. She's trying to take over the leadership, or she sees herself as the leader and you as a junior partner. So that's very important. And then the decision making. Who sets the schedule? Like if you guys are having a weekend, who decides that we are going to have breakfast at this time, we're going to go to church, which church service, which the mass of 10 or the mass of 7 a.m., okay, or the mass of 11 and so on. Who decides what happens after church service and so on? Who dictates the schedule? So that's very, very important. Who allocates the resources? Who decides how much school fees you should pay? Where should you go for holidays and so on? So the life choices that you make, you need to check who is in charge of this. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes it feels, and the problem with us men is we are so laid back. Sometimes you think you can just lay back. She tells you, okay, so we are going to Joburg for Christmas. You say, okay, that's fine. We have the money and so on. But the challenge with the relationships with women is that the power, once they shift, they wrest the power from you and they feel that they're in charge, they are not able to remember that there are actually roles within this relationship that are based on your agendas or on your sexes. She is going to now treat you like an equal or a junior partner. And then the other very important cue is the sexual dynamics. Who initiates intimacy? I normally tell guys one of the ways you can know that your woman sees you as a beta male is if she never initiates intimacy. If you're always the one reaching out for her, it means she does not find you desirable. So this is very, very important, okay? And as far as the power dynamics is concerned, you should check, does she withdraw intimacy sometimes? Maybe when you've had a fight, or you've had a disagreement, or you've declined a suggestion. Does she treat it as a bargaining chip? Or does she use it to negotiate and bargain? That's very, very important, because many women are, they are wired to do this. They use sex to wield power in the relationship. So you need to be able to get these subtle cues. Be very, very alert and sensitive. Okay? How can you know that this power is shifting? As I mentioned earlier, you should be able to detect the frame shifting. She wants to make all the decisions. And when you make or when you counter her, she escalates and pushes back. Okay? So if she tries to escalate, she's willing to actually have a conflict or start a fight because she wants her way, it's her way or the highway, then you know that the power is shifting or the power has shifted or she wants the power to shift. Okay? Then also need to check decision checks. Very, very important. As a man, you should be able to make some very small, very clear decisions within your household or within your relationship. Okay? Like where you're supposed to eat, when you're supposed to eat, when you can leave. If you go to a place, maybe you're going to a party, you tell her now, we need to go. Okay? She needs to enter your frame and take your leadership. If she doesn't, you're either in trouble or the trouble is brewing. Okay? How do you spend your weekends? If she wants a staycation and you're not for it, you're telling her we don't have the money, or you don't feel like, how does she deal with that? Does she escalate it? Does she tell you I have the money? If you don't have the money, I have the money. She wants to wrest power from you. So that's very, very important. And then also another one is behavioral checks. Many guys are not observant, but you need to be very, very observant. If when she's around you, she's just grumpy, she's just on her phone all the time, she's quiet. But when she's around others, she's so happy. She gives a very good energy, very talkative, full of laughter and so on. Then there's a problem there. Okay? She needs to maintain the same energy when she's around you. and or maybe she should be happy around you than around others. But it's the opposite is the case, you have a problem. Okay. Also check the sexual polarity, as I mentioned earlier. Intimacy should flow naturally, and preferably she should occasionally, it can be either way, you can initiate intimacy or she can initiate, but it should not be that you are the one who is always initiating intimacy. It is true that biologically men have a greater need for sex than women, but that does not mean that you should always be the one chasing her for sex. Okay, so that's very important. And I've talked earlier about starfish sex, where the woman is not interested in sex, she's very dry, she does not get wet for you, and so on. That is an indication of something. Okay, so what do you do to ensure that the power dynamics does not shift from you to her? How do you ensure that this invisible handshake does not take place? The first thing you have to do is to ensure that you cultivate presence. Be very present. When you are speaking, speak clearly. Be very decisive, and communicate whatever it is that you want very, very clearly. Don't be afraid to communicate your thoughts, your desires, and so on. There are cases where women cook and they give their husbands food and they put a lot of salt. And they ask this man, so how is the food? And the guy says, yeah, the food is okay. But the food is really salty, and she knows it is salty. Just testing you, behaving in a goofy way like a small child. So be able to know and communicate what it is that you're feeling and what it is that you want. Secondly, and this is very important, stay mission focused. It's very important for men to have a mission. A man without a mission is a man without meaning. Make your mission the most important thing in your life. Okay? And then the woman can complement that particular mission. A man that is on a mission cannot be destabilized, because that mission is what gives your life meaning, and that mission is what makes you attractive. That is how you become a valuable person in the society. So it's counterintuitive, because many people, sometimes women manipulate you and tell you, oh, now you're a family man, you need to prioritize your family. That is not the case. You need to prioritize your mission, because your mission is what is going to make you become a valuable member in the society, and that's how you're going to become a good example to the children. And if you have sons, they're going to be able to emulate your focus, your discipline, and so on. That is how you build your frame. So be mission focused. Thirdly, you have to guard your boundaries. So we normally say that when your boundaries are violated and you keep talking about it, then those are not boundaries, those are just suggestions. So boundaries must be enforced, and you enforce them through physical action, not violence. Maybe I'll have another YouTube video for that, about enforcing boundaries. You walk away, you withdraw resources, and so on and so forth. And you have to also be willing to terminate the relationship if the boundaries, they keep getting violated. So guard your boundaries. Don't tolerate disrespect. Okay? And as I mentioned earlier, red flags never become green flags. So if you try to enforce your boundary and see she's still pushing back, okay? Maybe she comes home late, or she's flirting with her boyfriend on the phone, her ex-boyfriend, or she keeps the company of male, or she's going for these weird girl trips, and you've told her you don't like it and she repeats it. You need to be able to walk away. That's how you enforce boundaries. And then you must always retain logistical and financial discipline. Have your means of moving. Okay, don't rely on a woman's car. You must make sure the house you're living in, you're the one who is paying rent. Don't rely on her financially. That makes you emasculated. Okay, a man must guard his resources. A very powerful man has to guard his resources and his means of maneuvering. Do not rely on a woman for that. When you do that, and that's why many guys who lose their jobs, they end up being in trouble. COVID actually ended up spelling the end of many marriages, because the men who lost their jobs, their women could not support them. The respect is gone. The desire is gone. They can no longer be intimate with you because you don't have the resources. You're not able to provide. So as a man, the thing I normally encourage guys, have multiple streams of income. It is not enough to have a job. or just one business. You must diversify. You must be able to have redundancy plans, contingency plans, plan A, plan B, plan C, so that you can always be able to hold your ground as a provider and as a man who can stand up for himself into perpetuity. Never allow yourself to be in a situation where you're depending on a woman. Okay? So lastly, power dynamics. It's about polarity. It's not about domination. You don't need to dominate her. You just need to have a frame from the get-go where the things you like, the lifestyle you're living are very clear, and the things you don't like are very clear from the beginning of the relationship. Okay? And a woman who loves you and a woman who wants to be part of your life is going to enter your frame and is going to submit to your leadership. You will never have to use any kind of force or coercion. And if you have to, then you're going to have very turbulent times ahead. So that is it about power dynamics in relationships. And I'll see you guys on the next one.